What's up, everyone? Welcome to First Seed Fantasy. Thanks for tuning in. It's the end of the regular NFL season. We're hitting up not even fantasy playoffs anymore. Hitting up the NFL playoffs. And with that in mind, we're gonna take a little bit of a look back. Uh, make some hand out some fantasy awards, some fantasy superlatives after this 2022 NFL season, and just kind of reminisce on what a great year it was, and then just kind of be excited for the NFL playoffs. But fellas, how are you? How are you tonight?
Doing good.
Sleeping well, man. Sleeping well.
No
Hope you guys are
complaints.
doing good too. New Year,
Love to
Happy New
hear.
Year's.
Happy New
Mm-hmm.
Year's, the First Seed fam. Uh, Hope everyone's healthy, happy, and enjoying some football. But either way, let's get to it. I will, in the background, if you are watching, just kind of have up a draft board from the summer, from our kind of league of record, the one that we take a lot of pride and joy in being in. And uh, Mike will probably take a few jabs at some of these team picks, but kind of putting it up here just to kind of show what draft rooms look like uh, at the start of the NFL season, and what we had no idea what was in store for this season. So bask in it. Look at all of our weird decisions, like Kadarius Toney at the end of the eighth round. Uh, what a guy! But either way, let's get into some fantasy superlatives for the 2022 season, and we're gonna kick us off with Mr. Reliable. Basically, somebody you could count on every week. He was your must start every week. He was the guy you could go into Monday night down 20, down 15, and you're like, not a problem. He's getting that. And I'm going to toss a name out there for you guys. I don't think we're really going to crown one specific dude for each of these. We kind of list our picks. But my guy for this was Devontae Adams. I mean, I think he had a 1 point game there and then went on a tear of like 4 30-point games. And that to me was all I needed. And man, it was a blessing to have him on my team. So Devontae Adams was a blast. Guys, who are you tossing in here?
Well, I mean, I was kind of just speaking on Devontae. I kind of was hesitant to pick him just because we didn't know. I mean, we knew that uh Devontae and Derek Carr had a rapport in college, but I just didn't expect him to get that same level of volume, especially with the amount of weapons that the Raiders had to begin the season. Uh, so to see that he's still getting his regular, 17 targets to start off the season against the Chargers, 17 targets against the Jags, you know what I mean? Like that's awesome to see as as an owner, especially when it's PPR. So I like he's someone I definitely have on my radar. We don't know. I mean, he's 30 right now. I don't know if he's going to be 31 by the start of the season, but I still feel comfortable, uh, picking him up to the start of the next season for sure.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hop in.
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Zach.
Mike. No, go ahead. I was gonna change B to a different player. Go ahead.
Yeah, just quick on Adams. As we have the draft board up here, I drafted at the 12 spot, and I kind of went double running back. And the whole summer, I was kind of contemplating like maybe I don't, maybe I get Adams instead. And like Dante said, I was a little bit hesitant. I wish I would have taken him. But yeah, I think it's only up for Adams. He is getting old, but I think he's going to see a QB change next year, and they're not going to have that run game anymore with Josh Jacobs probably being gone. So that offense is going to like really focus around him, and maybe with some good QB play, like it boosts my confidence in taking him next year. Maybe like that late first round, like I planned on doing. So I just wanted to throw in a quick comment about Adams there.
I mean, looking at the draft, it doesn't like I don't think I would take. I think he was taken appropriately. I don't think I would take him over any of the guys going into next season, at least. I don't think I would take him over the guys that are ahead of him. You get like a Diggs, Chase, Cup, Jefferson. I mean, maybe Tyreek Hill. Just looking at the way it planned out. But yeah, I think that's an appropriate spot for him.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'll hop in and I'll flip the script here. Just another guy that I had specifically in a lot of leagues was Saquon Barkley, and I think that he definitely can kind of get that tag of being Mr. Reliable. He just looking at his breakdown on a week to week basis. I mean, he was over 10 points in just about every single game this season, with the exception of 3. One being week 11 at Detroit, one being week 14 against a tough Philly defense, and week 17 when he was kind of on a pitch count against the Indianapolis Colts. So I think he was just phenomenal, especially at the point that you drafted him at. He gave you that, if you got him, on the turn and as your second running back, he gave you that RB2 value. And in some cases, he was an RB1 for teams that went receiver heavy. And I think that he really just was reliable week in and week out. I really enjoyed owning him this year. And I think moving ahead into 2023, I think that he has a good chance to be equally as reliable regardless of where he lands, just because he has that really safe PPR floor where he's going to get his receptions. And I mean, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw that explosiveness in the run game come back again this year from him. He looked pretty dynamic, not just in the pass catching game, but also in between the tackles.
Yeah, I mean, as a Saquon owner myself, some idiots let me draft him in the third round. I don't know how that happened, but
It was
I
super
got
flex.
him.
Relax. It was super flex, man. Oh.
I'm just saying, I got him in the third round. Going into even into the preseason, it looked like they were going to utilize him a lot more. The Giants don't have a lot of weapons outside of him, so we knew that there was going to be, you know, a surge in his receiving work. But even in terms of his health too, like I just felt comfortable based on how he was describing himself going into the season when he said that his quad feels back to 100%. So with that, I was like, as long as you just got to pray that he doesn't get hurt with any other injuries. But I knew that we were going to get at least, at the very least, running back 2 numbers. But to finish off as the RB5 and PPR, RB6 and standard is more than what I expected from him this season.
Well, and there definitely is such a thing as a contract year boost. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it with a bunch of different players. We saw it with Lamar early in the season before he got derailed by the PCL injury. It's contract year performance is a thing. So it was kind of moving forward. That might be something I kind of keep my eye on. I'm not going to base my selections off of that, but I think it's definitely legit.
Yeah, some other names I'll toss in here. Austin Eckler had just 1 game during the fantasy regular season actually had zero games under 10 points during the regular season for the fantasy leagues. And then Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Kelsey all had 1. And then a bunch of other names had a few others. But
it's funny because to start off, sorry to cut you off, man, but to start off the first 3 weeks, like you were hearing in terms of Eckler, like what's going on with him? Like, are we gonna, or is he gonna be on? Should you trade him? Like, what can you get back for him? And it just goes to show that sometimes you just need a little patience to get players into the into their form for for the season. It's a long season, especially with the extra game. So.
You talking about Eckler or?
Yeah, no, Eckler. Yeah, because I mean, he had 11 points.
Start.
11 points week 1, 18 week 2, which is good for me. But we 13 points week 3. I mean, these guys were expecting over 20, and just goes to show like you got to be patient with some of these guys. Can't just be trading everyone left and right.
Dante, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm sure that there are some risk-taking managers out there that actually went out and traded for guys like Eckler and McCaffrey even really early in the season. And I mean, if you were lucky enough to flip, I don't know, like an Edwards-Helaire or Rashad Penny or someone that was having a great early season, for one of those guys that was underperforming, you could have really wound up with an insane fantasy team because some of those superstars were underperforming a little bit at the beginning of the season compared to the standards that we expect them to live up to.
Speaking of McCaffrey, that is going to be my Mr. Reliable. He finished as the RB2. Again, same draft. I ended up with McCaffrey and Saquon. I mean, I don't even want to talk about my third RB. It's Derrick Henry, but yeah, I ended up McCaffrey RB2, PPR. Listen, he was already doing well to start off the season with the Panthers, but when he got to the 49ers, he turned it up to a whole different level. You look at week 8, 42 points. He was heavy in the receiving work. I mean, it was back to McCaffrey like prime form. So, outside again, you still have to think about that injury is always going to be questionable to start off the next week, but that's something that you just kind of have to live with when you draft him. Like, and for people that took the risk, they reap the benefits. So he's someone. Again, he wasn't really falling super late. So if you have one of those top 3 picks, as a McCaffrey owner, I highly recommend if you're feeling dangerous, taking that opportunity.
Now, why we have these two in discussion, that brings up the 1.1 next year. What are you guys thinking?
101 next year, I feel like it's going to be Eckler. If that system doesn't change, I think it's going to be Eckler.
See, I'm on the McCaffrey boat. I think that it's almost a good thing Elijah Mitchell is there. Eckler is the show for the Chargers, and it worries me a little bit. I think Elijah Mitchell will take some of the beating in between the tackles, and I think Christian McCaffrey will stay healthy all season next year. So I would go McCaffrey personally.
I'm actually going to pivot and say Justin Jefferson. I think Justin Jefferson is going to finish with the 101, or he's someone I just feel comfortable taking. Like someone that, as the season unfolded, I realized that running backs you can get them in the later rounds, and especially in like the dead zone area. But wide receivers like Justin Jefferson, like Devontae Adams, they're really hard to come across, especially when you hit that middle fold. Like someone like Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, guys that didn't have the opportunities to start the season, but as the season went on, I mean, we're going to talk about other running backs too going forward. I mean, Josh Jacobs is another one. Guys that you can, maybe strike gold with, in the middle of in the middle of the rounds. But someone like Justin Jefferson, you're not going to be able to get in running back form or anything like that going forward. So I do feel like he's going to be number 1. I feel comfortable taking him.
Well, and Mike, I don't want to hop on my soapbox too much here, but I think that Dante's kind of got a point there where you in the last couple seasons in my fantasy experience, I found that going receiver heavy has really paid off for me. In our dynasty league, I invested in 4 super high end wide receivers, in Hill and Diggs and Higgins and Waddle. And then in your league, Mike, last year, our league of record, I went extremely wide receiver heavy. I had Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins, and I've won the championship. I've won 3 championships in the last 2 years off of that receiver strategy. So I think Dante and Jamar, that's right. I had Jamar, Keenan Allen, and D-Hop. That was stacked. But I think that's a great strategy that Dante highlighted. He pointed out Ramondre Stevenson, and I just kind of started looking around the board there. But if you took Stevenson, or you took Dameon Pierce, or Brian Robinson, or just looking at Kenny Walker, like Tyler Algier, Devin Singletary, like they're not sexy names, but I mean they're serviceable. You can plug them in every week, and you can let your receivers do the heavy lifting. I'm almost a little disappointed in myself looking back at my draft and going 3 running backs that early. I think I would have felt more comfortable leaving my draft with like 4 out of my first 6 picks being wide receivers. So I have that really comfortable base, especially in the PPR league.
Yeah, I think you guys basically covered it. Like 1.1 next year, I'm probably looking Eckler, McCaffrey, Jefferson, Kupp, kind of that same mixture minus JT. I can't trust JT until we really see that team like get its stuff together over there. So, but yeah, looking at our first round here, I mean, the first round was kind of like really nice. Like, it was definitely a stretch for our league to go receiver. I feel like that early. I feel like that was probably the first time that our league took that jump. And it was the year to do it. Like if Cup stays healthy, he probably outscores Jefferson. Like that's the way it was headed, at least in terms of points per game. And then you get to that 6th pick, and woof, that was one of the worst of the draft right there. Just got to put that out there. That's our good friend Vinny over there. Oof, a Steeler in the first round. I just had to throw that in there. Love you, Mitch.
All right. Moving on to talking about bad picks. Let's move on to our dud of the year. Our players who just did not pan out. They had all the hype in the world, and it was nothing. Their 2022 season was a whole lot of fantasy disappointment. And quite honestly, we spoke before the recording, and I think we all kind of have a consensus number one here, consensus pick, and that's Jonathan Taylor.
The 101.
The 101 selection is our 101 pick for dud of the year. And that just kind of goes along with having a bad team and also missing quite a few games. But couple those two together, he had a fantastic week 1. Everybody was riding high, 27 points. Jonathan Taylor was the 101, and then reality hit, and the Colts became bad, and he was bad. He had a good, okay stretch from weeks 10 to 13 with 24, 15, 18, and 13 points. And then that was it. That was his fantasy season. Aside from that, it was a lot you were disappointed with. Not your 101, not somebody you looked at the end of the season and were happy you really had on your squad.
Yeah, I think it's kind of unanimous. Just the 1.1 was the dud this year, and it's really unfortunate. It's very rare that it happens. I feel like it's happened the past 2 years with McCaffrey getting injured. But like you had mentioned, even if JT was kind of healthy this year, his numbers were not really 1.1 worthy, at least most of the week. So yeah, I look at like duds of the draft here. You really want to like focus in on the top like 3-4 rounds. And I see Jonathan Taylor. Who else here? I just had it in mind. James
I see a
Conner.
guy right smack in the middle of the draft board, Mike. Kyle Pitts.
That was going to be my next one.
Yeah.
James Conner, Kyle Pitts, and then if you want to go a little bit further in the 5th, you have Allen Robinson, who was really, really on a pedestal to start the year. And that just like clearly did not work out. So yeah, any one of those guys, but I think it's very clear it's JT dud of the year this year.
I think it is like he's the 101, so obviously it's him. But if I had to choose personally for me, it's got to be the guy I drafted. You see him right there, smack dab 111. A guy I've been advocating for this whole year, despite whatever's been going on. DeAndre Swift. Now, if you guys have been watching Hard Knocks, any Hard Knocks fans that are watching this right now, you saw the running back coach blow so much smoke up his ass. He looked like a hot air balloon, bro. That's how much they were giving him. He said, "Look, we go as far as you take us." He said that the running backs coach to DeAndre Swift in the preseason.
He was he was talking to Jamal Williams, who was standing behind DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, maybe like I guess that was the case, but that was the reason why I took him. He started off all right. What was week 1? Week 1, 26 points. We're riding high. But as soon as the injury comes in, he just completely fell. And as high as the ceiling is, and for where I lost one of my leagues because I drafted him, so. I couldn't just let him slide without, the appropriate criticism being shared towards him. And I'm staying as far away from as possible. He could have a McCaffrey year on steroids next year. I would not take him this year. I mean, next year or the year after that. If he had that amazing year, I would not. I'm done. I'll definitely, I'll just admire from afar at this point. So DeAndre Swift, he's like permanently just undraftable to me just because of this year.
That's like the epitome of the saying, you can't win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it, you know? Or you can't win your league in the first round, but you can lose it. Right there is an example. You know, you put all that faith in a guy with your first round pick and he just doesn't pan out. It hurts for the whole season.
Yeah, the drafting's not fun when it doesn't work out for you. So Swift, Taylor, and Kyle Pitts. Oh boy, Kyle Pitts was a fun ride. That was a blast. But turning a new leaf, turning over to steals of the draft instead of the dud. Guys that went later in drafts, or even undrafted guys that balled out and just completely turned around what their draft stock was. Guys who wound up in the top 10 of their positions or top 12 and were drafted maybe like 20 spots later. Guys that just really overperformed in their draft spots. And my pick, let's see, I have the stats here for him. Maybe I don't. My pick for this is going to be Josh Jacobs, just because of how well he performed. He was drafted a ADP of RB22, and that's because he started in the Hall of Fame game. And good running backs don't play in the Hall of Fame game. So because of that, everyone was kind of scared. Josh Jacobs was going to be a bust. It was going to be a heavy crowded backfield. And so nobody wanted him. But it turns out he finished the year RB3, and that's a huge jump. That is not what anybody expected. The dude balled out, and people were happy they drafted him.
Yeah, that was a beautiful one. And I'm just gonna go with my guy that we have listed here with Tony. Tony Pollard, another great steal. They got drafted right next to each other, oddly enough, in the 6th round in this draft here. But Tony was even going later than that in most drafts. You saw him in the 7th and the 8th. I have something pulled up here as well. Tony's an interesting one. He had 50% snap share in week 1, but he didn't really turn it on until week 7 against Detroit. That was the first game. He had a 65% snap share. And then kind of from there is where the Cowboys like committed to him as like an every game usage kind of guy that they wanted to use him. So if you take out those first 6 weeks of the season, I mean, what did Tony Pollard finish here? He finished as, I think it was RB8 on the year. And you kind of think like those first 6 games, he wasn't even being utilized until like week 7. That's just another steal, you know, like that's like a talent pick where the guy's phenomenal. You don't really trust them with giving him the ball with Zeke there, but if you did have the balls to draft him this year, that's one of those guys that carried you. You know, that could have been a league winner this year, Tony Pollard. So that's another guy I'm excited for next year. Realistically, I could even see on this draft board a clean swap. Or rather, not Swift going that low, but I could see Pollard going where Swift went next year, something right around that end of the first, early second range, and Swift definitely falling behind Pollard. So that's another great steal this year, I think, Pollard.
I'm going to hop in. I'll give you guys a wide receiver here. I think he kind of fell under the radar even when we're talking about it here because he was just so quiet. He was actually one spot outside of being a wide receiver 1 this season, and he went in the 9th round. And that's Tyler Lockett. I mean, he was just phenomenal this year. He reeled in possession. He's like a hyper possession receiver. It seems like he's just always kind of catching the ball. And, there were the memes all over Twitter about him where he doesn't take any contact and he's going to play till he's 90 because he catches the ball and literally just falls down. But it's almost smart. But he prevents wear and tear on his body. He's super consistent, always in your lineup week in and week out. And I mean, we saw him. He was playing, or he was getting you, upwards of 15, 16, 17 points every single week, which for someone that you're getting in the 9th round of your draft is more than you can ask for. I mean, he did bust a couple times. He had 5 points in week 1, and it looks like 3 points in week 6. But outside of that, he was over 10 every single other week of the season. And I think that that's just all you can ask for from a guy who you're drafting as your wide receiver 4, your wide receiver 5, maybe. So he's going to go ahead and be my steal of the draft. I love that in the 9th round here.
Yeah, that was another sneaky one there. I like that one.
My pick is going to be Ramondre Stevenson. I feel like he's another guy. Going back to our point about taking wide receivers in the first round, second round, he's another guy. He was picked in this draft at the 8-8, and he's someone that obviously didn't start off great. He had 4 points, 6 in week 1, 6 points in week 2, but he finished off as the number 7 running back in PPR, and that's someone that again is wide receiver. I mean, round 1, round 2 talent. So I feel like once Damian Harris got hurt, he was just able to. They were able to use him at his full capacity, get him in the receiving game. There are a bunch of highlights that there was. I remember watching one of the games. There was a one-handed like turnaround catch that he had. I think that went for a touchdown or at least for a long gain. So he definitely he looks the part. If I'm the Patriots, I'm kind of just giving him the reins and maybe making Damian Harris that third and short goal line back. And even though Damian Harris might siphon some TDs because he is a goal line back, I think the reception work kind of makes up for that. I mean, you look at some of the games: 8 targets, 8 receptions, 7 targets, 7 receptions against the Jets. 10 targets, 9 receptions against like that's wide receiver 1 level workload right there. So I think Ramondre is another reason why I personally I'm going to go wide receiver heavy to start off because you can get talent like this. There's going to be a Ramondre Stevenson next year. I just don't know who it is yet, but there's going to be someone like this that starts off slow and then picks it up, and that's when you win championships.
Heck yeah. Yeah. These steals of the draft, they are where winners come from. They shape winning teams, and they're hard to find because if we knew where to find them, they wouldn't be steals. They'd be drafted where they should be appropriately. But moving on.
Sorry, right before you move on, just a couple quick shout outs. Ayuk, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Hawkinson. I think we're 4 more really great ones.
Beautiful.
I just happened to
Christian
catch them
Watson
above your picture there. Christian Watson especially. Came on late in the season. If you held him, he was awesome for you. Shout out to the rookies. Big time. Shout out to the rookies.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta add one more here. Devonta Smith, our wide receiver 9 on the year. He was another one that nobody even looked his way because AJ Brown was there, and you saw Smith the year before without AJ Brown not really do much. So that was another one. And ironically enough, it looks like the 7th spot got Jacobs and Smith back to back, 2 great steals. Definitely, it was also a first round exit. Yeah. So that's fantasy for you.
That's what happens when you take Kyle Pitts.
Just destroys everything. You're done.
All right, moving on. Next award, most improved. This can be throughout the 2022 season, from last year to this year. Basically, they made a jump in their quality of gameplay. And I'll kick us off. Number 1. It was a huge jump mid-season, and season to season, it was also just as huge. But, I mean, I don't think anybody saw as big of a transition in their performance from beginning of the season to the second half than Justin Fields. That man was on a tear of 7, 2, and 9 points to start the season, weeks 2 through 4, and then just dominated. There was 17, 19, then 21, 30, 48, 42, 23. Up until he got hurt, came back and was 19, 17. Finished the season as the QB7. Last year he was the QB 31. I mean, he didn't play the whole season last year, but this year, huge step forward, and a guy that I quite honestly can't wait to see more from. especially if this team decides to put some extra weapons around him, because this dude can run and didn't look too bad throwing the ball either. So, man, huge improvement just throughout this season.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to really. I think that's got to be in a way most improved. And I know we have a lot of names on this list here. Not so much like improved like during this year, but I think you can throw in like Geno Smith as well. He was another guy that kind of
Definitely.
like not a high talent guy.
Oh my
and
gosh,
nobody
yeah.
was really looking at him, but he had a really great year, like football wise, decent year fantasy wise. He was another one. I don't even think he got drafted in most drafts.
We all mocked the Seahawks preseason. Remember that? We were like, "Are you going
Yeah.
to start Geno Smith?" You know, and I mean,
wow, we did.
right?
We
Like,
did.
I mean, he balled.
Yeah.
I mean, look at where DK Metcalf is taken.
Yeah.
What is that?
No
The
one
fifth
wanted him.
round. Yeah, no one wanted because again, who was throwing him the ball? So
Right.
I mean, as someone that you know, I gotta take the L this year with the Russ slander. I gotta accept it. But I mean, just looking at it from the Seahawks perspective, I mean, geez, you ran with house money. Even if you were to be like, all right, Gino, thank you. You know, thank you for your service. We're gonna move on. You still got like, you know, a top 5 pick. I don't know where they are, but it's got to be up there, right? Like they suck this year, the Broncos. So and they got their pick. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like, geez, man, I don't know what's going to go on going forward with both teams, but as a Seahawks fan, you got to just be happy in the playoffs, just soak it in. But yeah, it was in terms of Geno's play, like they didn't write him off. They didn't write him off, or they wrote him off. He just didn't write back. That's what it was. He didn't write back.
I love that. That's got to be quote of the year.
Yeah,
Week
for
1,
sure.
that was incredible.
For sure. My guy, I was looking at a couple guys most improved. I thought we were going like based on last season to this season.
We were,
So
yeah. I went off board there. That's my bad.
no, you're good. You're good. I could do. They're both Jaguars players, but in terms
Give
of
them both.
last
Go ahead.
season, in terms of last season and this season, my first guy would be Christian Kirk. He's someone that I don't even know. Looking at this draft, where was he taken? I can't even see him.
7th round.
7th round?
Yeah, third team, 7th round.
7th round. He finished as the wide receiver 26 in 2021. So, wide receiver 2 value. No, wide receiver 3 value. But he finished in this week as wide receiver 11 PPR. So he really, with the Trevor Lawrence kind of getting into form, second year, and I mean, look, some of the games he was getting 12 targets, 9 targets, 10 targets. If you were able to get that in the 7th round, I mean, that was beautiful. He also had career high touchdowns. He had 8 touchdowns this season. That's a little volatile. I mean, I still feel confident based on the fact that their offensive scheme really only had those weapons out there. I mean, you look at Zay Jones. There's another guy we're going to talk about in a little bit, but who else? Marvin Jones, even Evan Ingram. He had a great in terms of tight ends. He had a really solid year, just because they were running the same schemes and having those same players out there. So he's a guy that I felt deserved the mention. And then the other is the running back in terms of this year alone, Travis Etienne. I mean, you look at him. He started off week 1, week 2, 8 points apiece. Week 4, 3 points, and then he just took off. 14 points, 18 points the following weeks, 25, 26. So he's someone that I'm going to be looking at towards those like that 3rd, 4th round. Where was he taken in this draft? Let me see.
Looks like 3rd round.
3rd, yeah. So I mean, look, that was even at that time, I kind of would have been hesitant about that, but look, it turned out at the end. I mean, you look at James Robinson, who kind of was making you look like, did I make the right decision taking Travis that early based on how James was kind of playing in the beginning? But once he got traded to the Jets and then ceased to exist, Travis Etienne really kind of took up the reins and became the running back that was appropriate for that spot.
Yeah, point out that 6 spot team again, ugly, but that team started off terrible, got better as it went on in that draft. It took its worst running back first, its worst wide receiver second, and then got better as it goes down there. Yeah,
the old reverse draft.
Yeah, a little reverse draft there.
All right, I'll chime in real quick with my biggest improver of the year, and I'm going to throw 2 guys out real quick. The first is, and they're both kind of the same story. The first is Cam Akers, who was just non-existent at the beginning of the year. He really wasn't a factor in fantasy. He got benched. He was gone from the team for a while. There were all just kind of weird things going on with him. And he actually came back and finished off the season on a pretty high note, I would say. He let me see if I can find his stats here real quick. Yeah, he finished with a couple weeks of 19, 13, 34, 14, 15. I mean, you were picking him up off the scrap heap, and that's really good quality for a guy that you didn't expect anything out of. And the second guy that I'm going to say followed the same narrative except last season is Brandon Ayuk. I mean, we mentioned him a little bit earlier in the most reliable or whatever category I brought him up for, the steal of the draft. I'm sorry. But last year to start off the season, there was speculation about whether Kyle Shanahan hated him or whether he did something wrong and all that. I don't know if you guys remember that because he just wasn't playing in games. It was weird. And he had like a bad season last year, but this season he eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving. He had 78 receptions and he had 8 touchdowns, which I think is a really nice kind of bounce back season, especially kind of fitting into that like most improved category. You were happy with him all season this year.
Man, I love Brandon Ayuk. If I could pick him for everything, I would. But as Zach disappears, let's move on to our final big award, and that is our fantasy MVP. And we all have, I think we might all have different tastes here, especially Mike. I know he won't choose one of these.
Wow.
But we have a list here. But my personal fantasy MVP is Austin Eckler, primarily because I think he won a lot of teams' championships this week, and I think, or this season, just from his performance in the championship week. But I also think he had a huge reason of getting those teams there, and because of that, I think he is my fantasy MVP. From the regular season to fantasy playoffs, he was a baller, and he was great, and he was Mr. Consistent. He was all over the place. He scored. He only knows how to score touchdowns, and he did that again this year as he did last year. And for that, Austin Eckler is my MVP.
Yeah, it's really kind of hard to argue that. Like, I could say McCaffrey, but McCaffrey had weeks where he had under 10 points, and then he had a week in the playoffs that he had 13. So based on that, I can't really say that he had the technical better year than Austin Eckler, especially with the reception work that Eckler was getting. I mean, McCaffrey too, but Eckler was just on a whole different level. So as far as MVPs, I mean, there can only be one. I can have a personal preference, but if I were just to be objective and say who got the best value, I think Eckler is the choice. I think if I had to like narrow by position, you could do Justin Jefferson, 2 as the 1 overall wide receiver. He did have a terrible championship week though, so that is another reason why I kind of I can't really say he was the better pick over Eckler. And then you could say maybe for tight end Travis Kelce be the other guy, but I don't know. I don't want to keep rambling players in case one guy has the guy, but yeah, those are just the top 3 players that come to mind at least for me.
All right, Zach, you're on the spot. Who's your fantasy MVP?
Go.
Oh shoot. Austin Eckler. Gotta be. I think especially what he did in the playoffs, gotta be him. Gotta be.
Yeah, Kyle, I can't disagree on this one. I like Eckler too. I like him more so because the drop off between RB 1, 2, and then like compared to like 3, 4, and 5 was humongous. Um, NFL MVP, obviously Mahomes would be my vote. I think that's where you were insinuating there. Yeah, Mahomes would be my MVP pick for the league. But yeah, Eckler for fantasy, man, it was such a big drop off between him and say Josh Jacobs, who was RB3 by like almost 50 points, which is definitely a big deal. So yeah, Eckler was a stud, man, especially like taking him after the first guy gets JT, and you're like, all right, now I'm in a division with this guy. He's going to have the best running back, and for Eckler to do what he did this year and be so consistent, especially in those playoff weeks, my MVP is Eckler.
All right, real quick, because I just wanna do a little like honorable mention one. We all look, we're not always right. There's some guys that we kind of are high up on, but just don't play well. They don't fit the mold. So I'd like for all of us to at least say one guy that we were really high on this season that didn't meet the expectations. And to give you guys a chance to think about it, because this is just off the dome, I'll start off by saying the Cooper Cup 2.0 I thought was going to be Hunter Renfro. Hunter Renfro. I thought Hunter Renfro was going to have, because Devontae Adams was there and they had Darren Waller. I thought Hunter Renfro was going to be, oh my gosh, I thought it was going to be Cooper Cup again, Cooper 2.0, and obviously it didn't turn out like that. Again, I say in order to sound like a genius, you have to sound like an idiot first. So I thought that maybe he would have that kind of productability. Turns out he just fumbled a lot, and when it really mattered, he just didn't show up. So that's on me.
Dante,
Well,
that's a good question. Obviously, if you guys have been tuning into First Seed in our videos, our collective guy was Michael Pittman that
yep.
we were so high on, all of us, and he just didn't live up to expectations. It wasn't that bad of like far off from what we expected. I've seen worse, but yeah, that's probably the collective one. I don't know. I'll let you guys go first. This is kind of hard.
I personally, I touted him probably much closer to the season start, and that's just because that's when my love for him kind of started to grow a little bit more. So kind of in that September-ish, late August area is where I was like, oh, I kind of really like this guy. And it just, my love for him grew and grew. And I am so thankful I didn't draft him in too many places. And that guy is Kyle Pitts. I mentioned him quite a bit closer to the start of the season. I was very excited for what could have been. And let's all admit it. That team is bad, and it's not Kyle Pitts' fault. And because of that, I will probably be back on the Kyle Pitts train. And I'm just warning you guys now to at least try to stop me. But I think it's going to happen again. So Kyle Pitts, my bad, but at the same time, he's a good athlete and he'll be back.
Dynasty. I mean, you do have to ride with him. Like his potential.
Who's got him? I need to trade for him.
He's an ideal buy low right now. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead. I'll take this one on the chin. I had him everywhere, especially in my super flex, and I'm gonna blame Dante for poisoning me with kind words about this guy, and that's Russell Wilson. I have him sitting there in the 10th round. I banked on him. I had the perfect 10th pick, third pick turnaround, I went Hurts and Wilson. I was like, I am on cloud 9 right now. I'm winning this league, and yeah, Russell Wilson just sucked. I'm gonna go ahead and I think it might have been the coaching a little bit. I really do. He also managed to find a way. I'm gonna use some French really quick to fuck me twice in one season. He brought me in last in my fantasy league because I decided to pick up the Chargers defense against him in week 18, and he went for like 400 air yards or something
right?
like that.
Oh my!
That was his
Yeah,
best
they beat the Chargers, and my defense
yeah.
got me 0
Yeah.
points, and I lost by 1 in the loser bowl and came in last. So here's to you, Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson. Yeah.
All right, honorable mention because you guys were so high up on him and I wasn't. Just because my Hunter Renfrow pick is so egregious.
I feel like you're about to say my guy, but go ahead.
Is he a receiver?
He is a receiver. Should I just go? Let me
Go.
go.
Yeah,
I gotta say, my biggest L this year, I was a heavy advocate in like early 4th, late 5th round, something like that. Was Allen Robinson. I was so off on Allen Robinson. Okay, so then we got another.
No. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Allen Robinson, man, I was so excited coming in with just McVay and Stafford and. Everything was looking good. You didn't really get any rumors of like them being or Stafford being hurt really. Like everything was looking up. And I was like, they're taking a great talent and they're putting him next to arguably one of the best receivers in football. I thought it was going to open stuff up for him. Genius OC. And that one completely took a left turn. I think more so than anything, like Allen's just getting a little bit older. And it clearly was showing that he was struggling against man-to-man this year. So that's an L for me. That was a huge L this year.
All right, my honorable mention is a guy that everyone was so high up on. He was gonna have an amazing year. The postseason last year, he went crazy. Oh my gosh, he had like it was in the playoffs. So I don't know how many fantasy points he would have had, but it would have been a tremendous amount. And that is a guy by the name of Gabe Davis, aka Diet Coke Mike Williams. It did not happen. I told you guys, no shot. He had one game where he had 32, 6 receptions, 171 yards. That was fantastic. You know what else he had? 6 points, 2 points against Baltimore. 5 points, 7 points. I mean, when's the last time he had a double-digit game? 21 against Minnesota. So that was a guy I was like, those deep threat receivers, they're gonna hit, and when they do, they hit. But when they don't, it's like they're non-existent. So he was a guy I got coaxed by all of you guys to taking. I took him in one league, and I ended up trading him for AJ Brown, luckily enough. But
wow,
that's a guy I'm not even looking at. Mike Williams, on the other hand, I am, because he gets Keenan Allen. We don't know how he's going to be. He's getting up there in age too, but Gabe Davis, no shot. I feel more comfortable taking McKenzie over Gabe Davis.
Let me ask you guys: Do we have our first official show nickname? Like we listen to the footballers all the time, and I mean everyone's got a nickname there. Diet Coke, Mike Williams being Gabe. That's good.
So that was a callback. I don't remember what episode Dante dropped that, but Dante called him the Diet Coke Mike Williams.
It was when he probably had that game. It was probably when he had that massive game. We were like, Gabe Davis, take Gabe Davis. And I'm like, no.
Listen, that's the best nickname I think of the year right there in fantasy. That is spot on.
That gets the superlative for that best nickname right there.
Best nickname, yes. Other than Bumboy Russ, that's solidified.
That's another one. That's
Come on, man. Nickname. That's a stray. I don't know. Can we just move on? I see. Just looking at the draft, though, I see like just some guys that you guys took that were people took in the draft. And Michael Thomas in the 4th round there. That's disgusting.
Yep.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Bateman
Dante,
in the
go
6th.
on a
Mooney.
tear,
My
man.
heart.
You're not
I
in
think-
this one, so go on a tear. Start roasting guys.
I think
dude.
drafting
Let's
Michael
hear it.
Thomas in any round of any year after
Ever.
2019 is bad.
Keep it going. Keep it going. Who's
Colin C. Gavs at the 11. He took Darnell Mooney and Hunter Renfrow back to back. That's
Listen,
oh my
I think
God.
I will say at
Oh
the
my
time,
God.
Dante, I think you would have praised that.
Yeah, probably.
What is that? Oh, Hunter Renfrow, great pick.
Probably,
Great
yeah, Hunter Renfrow. I'm telling you. What else?
man.
What else we got here? I mean, the late rounds are kind of just like whatever. It's. I mean, the Allen Robinson pick isn't great, but I don't really see anything else in terms of just flipping the script. I mean, you got Amari Cooper in the 7th round. He was a guy that I took that ended up winning me my championship because I had a Deshaun stack. So that really helped out right there. You got Algier right there in the 10th round for that team that you really despise, Mike. You keep shitting on that team for some reason, but that Algier pick really worked out for him. At least you could say that.
Which one? Which one? I'm sorry. Which one?
It's Vince's team. He got Algier in the 10th round. That's something. That's something.
I think Algier might have switched teams like 4 times.
Oh, well, you know.
that's a donation team right there. Dante, without keeping in mind obviously what happened this whole year, try to be unbiased towards it, but look at this draft board. Who had the worst draft? If you were still in the preseason and you didn't know what was going to happen.
How do you look at this?
It's very hard, but like go back to like all the videos we were making preseason this year and who we were high on, who we were low on. Like if you could remember what team would you be the least confident in going into the year with?
Looking at it, I mean, I guess my hatred is so deep for DeAndre Swift. I'm inclined to go. I'm inclined to go see Cavs. You know, that Nick Chubb pick is really nice. And Kittle turned it up at the end of the year. But I mean, the Mooney pick, Renfrow, Singletary, like Ayuk and Garrett Wilson, though. I will say those
Jacoby,
guys.
And Jacoby too.
Jacoby.
Some solid.
So
Even Singletary, but I think he dropped Singletary right away. So.
No, Singletary. As a Singletary owner, I'm like, no, Singletary was not it this year. He had a couple games where it was like, oh wow, like that's nice, but for the most part, it was like, oh, come on, man, what are you doing?
Hey, the CGAVs draft made the Super Bowl, dude, which is beyond.
And I could see that. No, I could see that if he made right moves, because his wide receiver core actually turned out to be really nice.
What if I told you that he really didn't make any moves? That was it.
He traded me Ayuk and Singletary.
That's it, and he didn't really get much in return. Not like important pieces. It was really Mahomes, Kittle.
Mahomes is big. Chubb like went on a tear. He was probably the RB1 to start off like the first month of the season. And Garrett Wilson, he didn't have a great playoff performance, but Garrett Wilson kind of was another person that kind of got him. It makes sense. But yeah, I just going into it, I would have. Even now, looking at it, I'm like, how this team make the Super Bowl? Like, I don't really know. But
yeah.
That's one of them. That's my pick.
All right, Dante. Thanks for roasting our league mates.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
That was the Dante monologue. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now, fellas, before I wrap us up here, I want to show you. I gotta end on a good one. So let me bring us back here, and then I'll go a little bit over here. I'll send us out on a Scooter Pete Carroll.
Stop it.
My favorite story.
Oh, my bad.
He's trying to slide through. He's trying to sneak through, and you got Chino doing the gritty.
And that is Scooter Pete Carroll wrapping us up here with our fantasy awards. Thank you, Pete. It was an honor to have you on.
I think he's the oldest coach in the league, right? Pete
He
Carroll?
is by
I
quite
saw
a bit.
he's now outlasted like 15 other NFC West coaches with Cliff Kingsbury getting fired, something like that.
Wow.
I couldn't believe the stat that the Cardinals hadn't had an NFL coach for 6 consecutive seasons. And
Wow.
I think they are one of the oldest franchises in the NFL.
Wow.
One day I'll tell you guys a story about the Pottsville Maroons. There's a curse on the Arizona Cardinals, and it's because of the Pottsville Maroons. That's a story for another day.
Speaking of the Cardinals, real quick though, the Hard Knocks, because their season is so bad, it's actually really interesting seeing like how you look at the team and week by or episode by episode, week by week, you see like the faith just slowly like deteriorating. Like it's really bad. But the JJ Watt send off that's coming on tonight, I think. I'm just watching it for that. That's shout out JJ Watt, tremendous career. Probably won't watch this, but you know, in case he does,
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in, man. Great career.
Great career. Shout out.
Shout out, JJ.
Shout out.
Thanks for
Shout out
tuning
you.
Send me a
My boy.
jersey, JJ.
All right, fellas. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. We are First Seed Fantasy. You can follow us on socials at First Seed Fantasy on Instagram, First Seed Sports on Twitter, and if you're checking out Underdog on for the playoffs, they're a blast. You can use code First Seed for 100% deposit match. You can play playoff best ball, and it's a blast. I'll be jumping in some drafts, and if you use our code, get a 100% deposit match. Doesn't hurt. So, fellas, it's a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for telling me who your fantasy MVPs were and why they were all the same that I picked. Guys, it was great chatting with you, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
See you in the next one.
Peace, guys.